Greetings, kindred. We're going to continue our study of the book of Ezekiel, a study written by Pastor Lancelot Knight approximately 23 years ago. So a lot has happened since then, and we've learned a lot of new things since then, but we're doing chapter 24, and last time we finished up with chapter 23. And if you recall, in chapter 23, the king of Babylon is coming to be our Father's instrument of chastisement when he pours out the cup of his wrath upon this final rebellious generation. And when that cup is poured out, it will be totally, completely emptied. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. There are common beliefs among all Christians, and one of those beliefs is that Yeshua Christ is going to return to this earth, i.e., that there will be a second advent. However, from their biblical illiteracy coupled with the traditions of men, cause great division among believers as to how, when, and where his return takes place. Yet the answers to these questions have been given so many times throughout the Bible that we are without excuse in knowing what is about to transpire as the final grains of sand run out of the hourglass of this flesh age. Far too many Christians have been taught to believe that Yeshua Christ will secretly return at any moment and take up his church in what is commonly called the rapture. But we have been told time and time again by the prophets of Old Testament, the apostles of the New Testament, and by Yeshua Christ himself, that the king of Babylon, the son of perdition, the abomination of desolation, i.e., the spurious Messiah, is coming first. He will appear at the sixth trump, and all the people of this earth, whether saint and sinner, or rich man or poor man, will face his sword before the seventh trump sounds, and the kingdoms of this world become the kingdoms of our Yahweh. Okay, I want to just stop here for a minute, and we learned in earlier chapters that Yahweh is going to hold us all individually accountable for our beliefs. We can't blame it on what our pastor taught us. We can't blame it on even this pastor, what he's teaching. You are responsible for checking everything out in the Word yourself. And you may come up with a different conclusion than what Pastor Knight here has concluded. So let's continue. We have also been told throughout the scriptures that the king of Babylon, the anti-Messiah, i.e. Satan, is coming to that great city of Jerusalem, the city of blood, the mother of harlots, to sit in the most holy place, i.e., that location called Mount Zion that our Father chose in Ezekiel 16 as his favorite spot in all the universe. Those who are biblically illiterate and deceived by the traditions of men will spiritually fall by the spiritual sword of the king of Babylon, which is confusion, while those who have the seal of Yahweh in their foreheads will not be spiritually harmed and will take a strong stand against the fiery darts of the spurious Messiah. You see, it is our Father who sends the king of Babylon and his army of angels upon the earth. Why? As both his instrument of chastisement to the sinner and the deceived, and his fire of purification to his own. We have already learned in the book of Ezekiel that when fire comes upon the stubble and straw, they are consumed away. But when it comes upon gold, the gold is purified as the slag rises and is skimmed off. So once again, as part of being told time after time, we will read in this 24th chapter of Ezekiel about the fire that is sent to purify the souls of men. Each time we are told, whether it be straight on or in a parable, such as the one we are about to read, we gain further insight as to the feelings and desires of our Father. Also remember that if there is any one verse that a Christian needs to know in order to understand fire as it is used in the Scriptures, it is Hebrew 12:29. For our God is a consuming fire. That fire consumes those who despise him and warms the hearts of those who love him. Let's begin Ezekiel chapter 24. Ezekiel 24, verse 1. Again, in the 9th year, in the 10th month, in the 10th day of the month, the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, This 10th day of the 10th month, to Beth, in the 9th year of Jehoiachin's captivity, which is 480 BC, will be the day the king of Babylon comes against Jerusalem for the 3rd time. See next verse. Tebeth in the Hebrew calendar corresponds to our January, so the king of Babylon appeared in Jerusalem on the 10th of January. This is a very interesting date to the watchmen of this final generation, given the fact the 3rd full-blood red lunar moon eclipse, happens next January about the same time. Remember our study of the signs in the heavens? Here is what we discovered. And it gives a website here. I'm not sure if that's still good or not. We'll come back to that. You might find it interesting that beginning from this past summer, you can count approximately every 6 months, and there will be a full blood red lunar eclipse. And there's a 6-month eclipse, 6 months eclipse, 6 months eclipse. That comes to 666. Check it out yourself. Don't take my word for it. The dates are January 21st, 2000, July 16, 2000, and January 9, 2001. Now, no one is setting any dates or saying that the spurious Messiah, the king of Babylon, will appear next January. We are just watching and teaching because that is what watchmen do. Verse 2. Son of man, write thee the name of the day, even of this same day, the king of Babylon set himself against Jerusalem this day. So Ezekiel was told to write down the date and to write down that the king of Babylon was coming against Jerusalem that very day. The people, therefore, knew what was going on in Jerusalem that day. Remember, Ezekiel was 300 miles away from Jerusalem, dwelling among the captives by the river Chebar. They didn't have TV or radio communications in those days, but they were not left without the same day news coverage, because with Yahweh all things are possible. He simply used his prophet and watchman, Ezekiel, to show them what was happening. So write that date down, that it is recorded that the king of Babylon came on that same day. Now that the people know what is happening, and we know what is going to happen in the near future, i.e., that the king of Babylon is coming, Ezekiel is told to tell the rebellious house of Israel in a parable form the why and purpose of what is happening. Verse 3. And utter a parable unto the rebellious house, and say unto them, Thus saith Yahweh Elohim, set on a pot, set on it, and also pour water into it. Tell the people to go fill a big old iron cooking cauldron with water and set it up. This pot is the same pot or cauldron we read about in chapter 11, or we read about in chapter 11, and it represents the fortified city of Jerusalem. Remember that the scoffers had ignored the warnings of the prophet and said that the king of Babylon isn't coming, and they are well protected by the strong fortified walls of the city, which they liken to an iron pot, which protects anyone inside. Here's a quick review of what those scoffers said. Ezekiel 11, verse 2. Then said he unto me, Son of man, these are the men that devise mischief and give wicked counsel in this city. Verse 3, which say, It is not near, let us build houses. This city is the cauldron, and we be the flesh. So, they think they are protected in that strong, fortified iron pot from the fire of Yahweh's wrath, huh? No problem. They can all just stay put and Yahweh will light his fire under that sucker. What in the world makes people think that an iron pot can shield them from Yahweh's wrath and withstand his fire? Come on, an iron pot won't even stop Superman's X-ray vision. Ezekiel 24, verse 4. Gather the pieces thereof into it, even every good piece, the thigh and the shoulder, fill it with the choice bones. The instruction here is to fill it with the choicest mutton, i.e. sheep, which represent Yahweh's people, all of them. This includes the common people as well as the leaders and the most distinguished of the people, the choice bones. Verse 5. Take the choice of the flock and burn also the bones under it, and make it boil well, and let them see the bones of it therein. Put them all in the pot and burn wood under it, and bring it to a rolling boil until the flesh is cooked off the bones. There's an asterisk there after wood, which is the Hebrew for the bones as it is used here, means specific bones, which simply means wood. Ezekiel 24, verse 6. Wherefore, thus saith Yahweh Elohim, Woe to the bloody city, to the pot whose scum is therein, and whose scum is not gone out of it. Bring it out piece by piece, let no lot fall upon it. Woe to the bloody city of Jerusalem, the bloodiest city of all time, where even the precious blood of our Yahweh and Savior was shed by the sleazy, slimy murderers who dwell therein. She is like a pot pitted with poisonous rust and lewdness and wickedness, a pot full of scumbags. Actually, the word scum used in this verse translates to our English word verdigris, which is the poisonous greenish scum that forms on copper and brass. So it is scum of the worst kind, even toxic scum. We could call it the mother of all scums. Verse 7. For her blood is in the midst of her. She set it up the top of a rock. She poured it not upon the ground to cover it with dust. Her wickedness, her blood, is openly exposed for all to see, for she is simply without shame. Did you know that the law in Leviticus states that when an animal is killed and bled, that the blood is to be covered over? There are numerous reasons for this, one of which is to hide the blood so that the rest of the herd doesn't see it and go nuts. Here's the instruction, Leviticus 17, verse 13. And whatsoever man there be of the children of Israel, or of the strangers that sojourn among you, which hunteth and catcheth any beast or fowl that may be eaten, ye shall even pour out the blood thereof, and cover it with dust. But you see, the murderous scumbags in that bloody city don't even hide the blood, nor cover their shame. Don't forget that Christ's blood was shed on the rock of the skull, i.e. Golgotha. Those responsible for that murder of all murders are not the least bit ashamed. Ezekiel 24, verse 8. That it might cause fury to come up to take vengeance. I have set her blood upon the top of a rock, that it should not be covered. Not only is the blood from that city visible to the whole world, and whether one has eyes to see it or not, one thing is for sure: it is visible and in plain sight to our Father, and those who are guilty are going to pay. Read the words from the lips of Messiah himself as he addresses those scumbags and Kenites in Jerusalem. Y'all might recall, I'm going to add this, Kenites were the descendants of Cain. And if you don't know, do some research and find out who Cain's father is. You might start with 1 John 3, verse 12, where it says, not as Cain, who is of, which is et, meaning son of, the wicked one. Okay, let that sink in for a minute. Matthew 23, verse 35. That upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, son of Barachias, whom ye slew between the temple and the altar. You can't hide sin from Yahweh. Ezekiel 24, verse 9. Therefore, thus saith Yahweh Elohim, woe to the bloody city, I will even make the pile for fire great. You know the old song, it is going to be a hot time in the old town tonight? Verse 10, heap on wood, kindle the fire, consume the flesh, and spice it well, and let the bones be burned. When Yahweh supplies the kindling fire, there ain't nothing in the pot that won't be burned, including the bones. Verse 11, then set it empty upon the coals thereof, that the brass of it may be hot, and may burn, and that the filthiness of it may be molten in it, that the scum of it may be consumed. This reminds me of the modern self-cleaning oven. After everything is cooked and taken out of the oven, it is superheated to burn off all the debris built up along the walls. That's what Yahweh does to this pot. He heats it so hot the lecherous, poisonous scum breaks off the walls.